For most of history, interest was feared, condemned, and treated as moral corruption by societies. Charging money for money felt unnatural, exploitative, and spiritually dangerous across ancient civilizations worldwide. Religions banned it, rulers restricted it, and communities distrusted anyone practicing it openly. Interest existed, but it lived in shadows rather than governing economies directly. Britain approached interest differently, not as sin, but as a tool requiring discipline. It realized controlling interest meant controlling time, behavior, and future decisions silently. Whoever priced borrowing shaped ambition, restraint, growth, and collapse simultaneously across economies. Britain aimed to regulate desire itself through mathematics. Early British finance focused less on lending volume and more on lending terms. Rates were adjusted carefully to encourage stability rather than reckless expansion. To low invited bubbles, to high invited rebellion and collapse, balance became Britain's obsession. The Bank of England emerged not as profit machine, but as behavioral regulator. Its interest decisions signaled discipline to markets, governments, and citizens alike. Borrowing became conditional on trust, not desperation alone. Trust became currency. Wars accelerated Britain's mastery over interest dramatically during imperial expansion periods. Financing conflict required borrowing at scale without destroying confidence. Interest rates were managed to sustain war efforts while preventing panic. Control replaced chaos. Other nations borrowed from Britain and adopted its interest benchmarks gradually. Rates set in London influenced contracts across continents quietly. Borrowing costs became standardized through British credibility. Interest traveled faster than armies. Colonies experienced this system as discipline rather than opportunity. High interest restricted local growth while protecting imperial lenders. Capital flowed outward. Returns flowed inward. Interest enforced hierarchy. Britain learned interest could punish without violence. Raise rates and slow economies instantly without firing shots. Lower rates and reward cooperation subtly. Money obeyed signals. Industrialization deepened dependence on borrowing dramatically across society. Factories, railways, and cities required long-term credit constantly. Interest decided which projects lived or died. Britain decided interest. Crises revealed interest's true power brutally and repeatedly. Raising rates crushed speculation, but also employment and wages. Lowering rates saved institutions, but rewarded excess. Britain balanced pain. Unlike others, Britain framed interest as technical necessity, not political choice. Numbers replaced debate, charts replaced accountability. Decisions appeared neutral, inevitable, scientific. Authority hid behind arithmetic. Central banking spread globally, following Britain's template faithfully. Nations copied structure, language, and restraint philosophy. Interest policy became sacred, insulated from democracy. Britain exported doctrine. By the 20th century, interest governed everyday life invisibly. Mortgages, savings, pensions, and currencies responded to tiny rate shifts. Households planned futures around borrowing costs. Interest ruled silently. Britain's genius was making interest feel natural and unquestionable. People argued about outcomes, not the mechanism itself. Challenging interest felt irrational or irresponsible. Control was complete. Yet beneath stability, tension accumulated slowly. Debt expanded, growth slowed, demographics shifted. Interest decisions grew heavier with consequences. Pressure mounted. The empire of interest no longer needed expansion. It only required maintenance of belief. As long as rates were trusted, authority remained intact. Britain understood belief. And belief, once embedded into systems, rarely asks permission to rule. As Britain's interest system matured, global finance quietly reorganized itself around British monetary signals permanently. Borrowing decisions worldwide increasingly responded to rate movements decided far away in London. Governments adjusted budgets, corporations delayed investments, households changed behavior based on interest expectations. Interest stopped reflecting economies and began directing them. Central banks emerged as guardians of interest credibility rather than engines of growth or innovation. Maintaining confidence mattered more than maximizing employment or industrial expansion. Britain prioritized discipline, even when discipline created visible social discomfort or outweighed popularity. International lending adopted British interest benchmarks as default reference points for contracts globally. Loans priced against London rates transferred authority invisibly across borders. Debtors accepted terms without questioning origin. Interest standardized obedience. Crises revealed how deeply this system penetrated political sovereignty. Raising rates to defend credibility triggered recessions and unrest domestically. Yet refusing rate discipline risked capital flight immediately. Britain designed no-win scenarios. Interest became a moral language disguised as mathematics. High rates signaled responsibility. Low rates signaled recklessness publicly. Policy debates narrowed into technical arguments. Democracy stepped aside. Developing nations felt interest power most sharply and consistently. Borrowing costs punished instability while rewarding alignment with global norms. Growth depended on pleasing creditors rather than citizens. Interest disciplined politics. Britain framed this system as neutral, rules-based, and globally beneficial. Stability justified sacrifice. Sacrifice justified authority. Authority remained unquestioned. Financial markets amplified interest signals through speculation and expectation cycles. Traders anticipated decisions, moving capital before announcements occurred. Power expanded through prediction. Interest ruled even in silence. Households internalized interest logic unconsciously over generations. Life decisions aligned with rate cycles rather than personal readiness. Debt structured identity and aspiration. Interest shaped culture. When crises threatened collapse, Britain adjusted rates carefully to preserve belief. Too much easing risked credibility. Too little risked rebellion. Balance required restraint and patience. Britain specialized in restraint. Over time, interest policy replaced ideology as primary governance mechanism. Left or right mattered less than credibility. Politics deferred to markets. Interest governed outcomes. The empire of interest survived because it appeared unavoidable. Alternatives seemed dangerous, chaotic, irresponsible. Questioning the system felt reckless. Britain protected inevitability. Even when rates approached zero, authority remained intact. Expectation replaced numbers. Signals mattered more than reality. Belief endured. Interest now governs not only money, but time itself. It decides when societies expand, pause, or contract. Britain mastered temporal control. Time obeyed rates. History may remember armies and flags, but interest shaped lives quietly. It influenced birth rates, housing, employment, and opportunity invisibly. Power moved into decimals. Britain noticed first. The empire of interest does not require conquest or occupation. It requires trust, memory, and repetition. Britain supplied all three. The system endured. If this story changed how you see interest, power, and everyday financial decisions shaping lives, remember, the most powerful empires rule time, not territory or visible resources alone. Subscribe for more untold histories where money quietly governs societies without permission, because the next rate decision may already be shaping your future.